In today's video, we're making a scroll saw cart. This cart is designed specifically for the Delta scroll saw, who is also the sponsor of today's video. To start off the build, I used a straight edge to mark off the lines where I was going to make my cuts. To make these cuts, I use my track saw. You can make these cuts using a jigsaw or a circular saw, it just makes it a little more difficult. The idea is to have two identical top and bottom pieces. The bottom is going to hold the cabinet and the top is going to hold the scroll saw. Once the bases are done, I can move on to assembly of the rest of the cabinet. I put a little bit of glue and I use my clamps to hold everything in place while I drive in some screws. It's also a good idea to throw in a few brad nails to hold everything in place and give the glue a little bit of time to dry. I'll use a countersink bit and some drywall screws to hold everything in together. Off camera, I applied a little bit of glue and put the cabinet sides onto the top and let it kind of just dry there for a little bit, and then I applied some screws. Going back, I probably should have used some pocket hole screws. It would have made everything easier to assemble. I used the same technique of brad nails and glue to apply the back piece and then put the top piece on by using the same method I did before. Like I said, it would have been a lot easier if I would have just used some pocket holes to line everything up. Alright, so now that the cabinet was done, I could put the scroll saw on top and test the fit. As you can see, everything looks good, and the next piece is to add the wheels to it. I used some casters that I got on Amazon, and I'll be including links down below if you want to check those out. I pre-drilled some holes and used the screws that came with the caster set to attach them to the base, and then the next step was to just flip it over and test it out. So I actually goofed in the design of this. I should have used 4 casters instead of 3, and I actually went ahead and added another one because I had some people message me saying that there's a possibility that the cart could flip over if you pull on one side. So alright, so the cart is pretty much done and ready to use. The only thing is I wanted to add a little bit of storage for the cord so that it wouldn't get in the way whenever I'm moving the cart around. So I put a spacer about 6 inches up, and then I put a few brads to hold in some scrap. And the only thing to be careful for is if you are using brad nails, you might get them to go the way that you didn't want to because of the grain of the red oak. So I use my Dremel here just to cut off the excess and make sure those weren't in the way. Alright, so I put the back piece on and then I just nailed it in place, and then I wound up the cord and it worked perfect. I decided to add a little bit more storage by throwing some shelves on one side. All I did was use a spacer to hold up shelves, and then I screwed in from the sides. And then I repeated the process. I just moved the spacers up, and then I put a shelf, and then used the countersink bit and some drywall screws to hold it in place. To prevent anything from falling off, I put a few pieces of scrap on the fronts of the shelves and then just braided them in place. Alright, so the scroll saw cart is done. I'm super excited to test it out and put this thing to use. And the last thing I wanted to do is thank Delta for sponsoring this video. If you haven't seen my miter saw station build, I'm going to include all the info for that. You can check that out. Also check out Delta's page. They have a bunch of awesome stuff and great videos for all their tools. Most of the content that I post is on my Instagram, and I'm going to include the link to that so you guys can check that out. That's where I do more weekly and even daily vids, showing you kind of like behind the scenes on how I make these videos. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and until the next time.